Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Dart API course, Dart and Flutter 2024. In this course, we'll learn how to build API using Dart framework. For building API, we are going to use Vania Dart. And for Vania Dart, we are going to cover installation and activation, going through the documents, Vania Dart CLI, Vania migrations, controllers, models, and eloquence, building API, and testing API. Here are the below endpoints that we're going to cover for our API building. Authentication API, product list, product detail, search products, profile API, that would be CRUD, wish list API, that would be CRUD, payment API, and notification API. Since this is not a UI course, so we are not going to build UI step by step. We just focus on building API. At the end of this course, we'll integrate Flutter and Vania Dart. This course, of course, comes with some pre-requirements. You have to make sure that your VS Code is installed, your Flutter SDK is installed, your Android Studio is up and running, and you have basic understanding of Flutter. Apart from that, we have lots of quizzes and assignments to bolster your Vania Dart knowledge. There is also a bonus in this course. We'll be installing a visual backend so that you can manage your users, products, and everything else. So let's get started. Okay, so from here on, we are going to work on our placeOrder API, and this section would be pretty long because it covers and involves a lot of complex topic. Even before we go ahead and start building our API, we have to understand a few things. For example, this would be our cart, and we'd be able to click on this button, and once we click on this button, we'll make the payment, and once the payment is done, then we'll come back and then we'll talk with the Stripe. So this is complex procedure. So how does it work? Say for example, here I have this item and then I can add it to cart from here. I think I have already done it. If I go back to cart, we'll see that it is there. Okay, right. And then say for example, this is the item. So I'm going to add it to cart. It's added cart successful. And then if I come back and see here, we see multiple items. So this is what increases the complexity because we just don't have one item, we have multiple items. So we're gonna handle this situation both in front end and back end. And their logic is almost similar though, but because back end is purely Dart and front end is Flutter, which is also Dart, but kind of different. And then we have to deal with both situations. But in the API, of course, we are going to purely write Dart framework or Dart language, right? Okay, so we have to grab all these things and then we're gonna click on this checkout button, and once we click this checkout button, it's gonna place an order in our database, and once it does, then it would give us response 200 or something like that, and then we'll go to Stripe and actually make the payment. The reason is because once you click here checkout actually you have to put your information in the database first. Okay, that's always the first step when it comes to payment. You should always place your information, product information, in the database, and then in the database there would be a column called payment status or something like that. So you have to put that payment status false. Okay, the reason is because you put this information in the database, but then you didn't yet make the actual payment. So for making this actual payment, you need to go to Stripe, and then once the Stripe payment is successful, we'll get something called like webhook. We'll know through webhook that whether our payment is successful or not. And then once the webhook returns, it will give us data, and we'll find our correct data, which will tell us, okay, the payment in Stripe was successful. And if it was so, then in front end over here, remember the database I was talking about, that payment status would set it to true. And with this, we'll have a complete payment cycle done from beginning to end. And then the other thing is that from front end, when we send data, we send the data as JSON. Okay, and then in backend we have to decode this data. The reason is JSON data actually contains this kind of quotation. You see that string like this. Okay, double quotation. That's okay, but not okay at the same time. When it saves this information in the database, JSON is okay. This JSON is preferred. But then when you manage data or process data in the backend, we have to convert this JSON to map. So that's why we're gonna have to decode the whole thing. All right. After decoding, we're gonna convert it to an object, and once we do that, then we'd be able to do further processing of the data. That's why this whole section would be pretty long, so bear with me and we'll work on this step by step. All right, so now let's go ahead and start working on our data. So this is our API for now over here. And in this section, actually, we are going to go ahead and create a new controller. So here we're gonna create new controller as placeOrder or order controller. So here it's a Vania make controller, and the controller name is order controller. Okay, cool. So that's the first thing that we needed, and for now we'd be okay with this thing. But in future we're gonna also make a new model, because as I said that it requires a lot of work. Okay, so over here I'm going to remove this. We don't need this. Okay, cool. This is the first part. And then we're gonna come over here in our API route. Over here we'll say payment section. So here we do router.post, and here we'll say place order. Okay, and here it's the order controller place order. You're gonna save it. We'll have error, and it's okay. And then over here we are going to say place order. Was it place order we called it? Yeah. Okay, let me go ahead and copy this and put it here. All right, and let's save it, and on the other side our error would be gone, and request and request. So always get the request object. All right, so that's the first thing that we have done. Okay, now in this section, actually we're going to continue to work and write our API. So grab a cup of coffee and take it easy, because it's gonna be a long API as well as a lot of information. Anyway, so the very first thing over here I'm going to do is try catch. I don't want to do it later, because we want to catch all the error. Most probably there would be mistakes, especially if you are not familiar. It'd be difficult to figure that out. So here we're gonna do return and response. So we're gonna go ahead with this .json. All right. So here we're gonna say like this, code and 500, and data, we don't return anything, we know that already, and MSG. Okay, server side error during placing order. All right, okay, so that's it. And now the very first thing we're going to do once we try to click this button, so what's going to happen, if you click on this button over here, checkout, it will grab all this information and post over here, right? This would get triggered, and as it does, here we're gonna get user ID first. And if you do remember that this is the most important method to get user ID once the user is logged in. Okay, all right, so this is the first thing. And the second thing over here, we're gonna do here final data, and then over here we would do request that input. So all the data that we're gonna get from our front end. Okay, so here we also call it data. Okay, you're gonna call it anything, most probably we're gonna call it with order. I think that makes more sense. Okay, all right, so this would be a keyword or data object that would be transformed. It's not data object actually. Okay, I would say the data object, right? So this would contain all the information about our cart over here, like the name, picture information, price, the quantity, and detail, this and that. Okay, so it will have everything there. So so this would be an object, and the very first thing over here we're gonna do, if data is null, so simply here we're gonna return 401 as we said early. Okay, I think here we could do 500, and then over here we do 401. All right, so we would also say that you are not authorized. You are not authorized, like that. Okay, this is what we've been doing all the time. All right, let me format my code. So I'm on Mac VS Code. We're gonna do Command Shift, I think it's Option Shift F, and it's gonna format the code. All right, it looks better. Okay, so the very first thing we did, okay, whether the user exists or not, we find that. But of course, we didn't do any checking on that because we also need to check whether there is a user or not. But we'll check on that. Okay. And then the other thing you want to do, as I said that early, that this thing over here is going to get us data in JSON format. Okay. So here you can write JSON format data. Now, JSON format data actually has codes in that, okay, to understand it, like this, ID 1, say, for example, address, say Shanghai. So this is double quotes, and these are okay to submit in the database, but if we want to process our data, then it's difficult to deal with this kind of string because JSON is more like a string actually. So we don't want to do that. So we want to convert it to a map, okay? Because when you have a map, you can actually skip this codes. The same data, if we pass it through a map over here, it would become without code. For example, this codes over here would be gone from this. It won't be there. And if it is not there, we can take all this and convert it to an object. And if we do that, we'd be able to use dot operator. And using dot operator, you know that it's easy to access certain field rather than typing in everything. Okay, so that's the purpose over here. So we're going to convert it to a map. Now to do that, here I'm going to do final cart list, and then here, as I was talking about, JSON decode. Okay, so it'll take this data, which is in JSON format, is going to decode and convert it to map. All right, so let's go ahead and import dart convert. All right, so far so good. Now, since we have understood this section, let me see, I think we have an error. Let's go ahead and import it. All right, the error should be gone now. All right, so since we have a better understanding this part over here, okay, so we're going to put some dummy data from our front end, and we'll see that how the whole process over here works. Okay, once again, this is just the beginning of our whole process. All right, so we're going to continue with this order controller, and from here on we're going to continue. Now the next thing we need to do over here, actually come to this model, and then here we are going to create a new file, and we're gonna call it product bin, I think bin, like that. You can name it anything. So actually it would be holding our product's information, not this one exactly like this. Okay, this has to do with how you process the data, and this is just saved in the database. So this model would help us to processing data. Okay, so this is what we are going to do over here. And since this is Dart, of course it would be easy for us to work on this. Here we're going to call product bin. Okay, all right, so the way I'm going to do over here, so here I'll have int id. That would be our, say, ID of the order or product. So in this case, actually, it would be product ID. Now here, I think I have this typo again, and let me go ahead and fix this here as well. So this is being confusing all the time. Sure, I'm gonna, why I do cut rather than duct. So here it should be duct product. All right, okay, now it makes sense. And then here we'll have string and then title. Now as you see that I'm keeping all of this nullable. The idea is sometimes if you want, you may skip some of the fields. If you don't make them nullable, you have to pass all the values, and which is sometimes tiring, because sometimes you end up passing unnecessary values. So when it is nullable, so you can skip some values when you need. Okay, all right, and then here we'll have string thumbnail. Okay, so this is where we are going. So let's go ahead and build the constructor of this. So here we're gonna say product bin, and then we're gonna build the constructor, and inside this constructor we'll have this .id and this .title, this .thumbnails. So this is the default constructor. Now default constructor are called when you give kind of hard-coded value. Manually you give them value when you call them. Okay, so this is Dart concept. For example, if you do come over here, let's do some test over here. So we can say final product bin, let's call it product bin, and then here product bin. All right, so here you see that, so this is the constructor that I'm calling, and then I need to give them explicit values. So let's go ahead and first import it. Okay, all right, so here I could do ID, say 1, and then say title, say chair in our case, and then a thumbnail. Okay, so here thumbnail is say image.xyz,
like that. Okay. Okay, so of course this is gonna give us the product information as an object over here. Surely to do that, but the problem is if you have, say, tons of products, okay, tons of products that coming from your front end, so this is definitely not sustainable, and this is not how you want to create an object for each of the. So what I mean by that this is not sustainable, if you go and see our class over here, sorry, not the class, the UI. Say for the first one I could do hard coded. How about the second one? And how about if you have more products? If you have 10 products, you cannot manually go ahead and hard code them. I mean, you could, but this is tiresome and error prone. Okay, so we were going to take a different approach over here. So here we are going to create a named constructor. So here we're going to do product bin dot from JSON. I think some of you might be familiar with this. And within it you pass a map, and map will have string, okay, and dynamic values over here as values, and you call it JSON. It's like that you pass JSON information to it. Okay. Of course, in our case, actually, we are passing map, so you can call it map. But I think the convention is calling JSON. This is very weird. Okay. Now with this, what's going to happen is that I can actually pass kind of this guy. Okay. But there are more steps before that. Okay. Remember, this cart list could have multiple items. Okay. So we have to go through the loop. And as we go through the loop, actually, we can catch each of the items and pass to this. And if we then do it, it'll be like this. You'll see JSON ID, okay, title, job title, and then here you'll see thumbnail, okay, like that. So it'll just simply work like this, okay. So it's gonna create an object for us based on the given information. Now this information, okay, they would be given from this JSON itself. So if you have 10 items in the cart list, this cart list actually represents the whole thing over here. So currently it will have 2 items. I mean, if we go and run, but we didn't do that yet, but you get the idea. So it will have 2 items, and then if it does, we have to go through the loop, and each of the item we pass to this guy over here, okay? And then we just only once manually mention the item. Later down the road, we can just simply go ahead and call this from JSON constructor, which is also called named constructor. Okay, all right, so you get the idea. Looks like we have an issue over here. Okay, the server port is either busy or not. It doesn't matter because we are not going to do a test, so I'm going to skip this thing. So you get the idea. But of course, another thing is that here this information are far less than what we need, so we need more information. Since you got the idea, for rest information, I'm just going to copy paste them here. So here is our complete model, and you can get this by downloading the code or from the resources section. It's gonna work anyway. Okay, now since we are done with this, now we can continue to work on this section over here. First thing you can do, you can just simply go ahead and delete this. We don't need this. I think there is a mismatch order. It should be like this, I believe. Okay, all right. And now over here, we could simply go ahead and create a new variable. And here we're gonna call it final dataList. And within it, here we're gonna call our product bin. And the product bin will have, like, it's initialized to empty. Okay, this is the idea, because there is no value. Okay, so it is a list, but this list would be empty. And then over here we could do like this: for then var element, we're gonna do a loop. Okay, remember earlier I said that this JSON decode, so this cart list would be a list of items from here. So since this is a list of items, we are going to go through a loop. Okay, and then the new data would save in this field over here. But of course we cannot do it final because we are going to change it. So here, say for example, we do var, which is much better, because if you have final, you cannot change it later. We know that. Okay, so here we're gonna do data list, and then we want to add item. So here we'd say add this one. Now this is coming from Dart, and then here we'd say product bin dot from JSON and element. So it's going through, go through the loop, and then it's gonna take items from our cart list, and as it does, it's gonna call from JSON, and once it's called from JSON, this would return us an object, and that object we are going to save in this data list. And since this would be done, later on we can just grab this list and access each of the item, and then that means we'd be able to access or use dot operator. So that's the idea. Because we want to use dot operator for our object manipulation, so this is what we have done so far. So we'll continue in next section. Well, to continue from here, actually we need to install two packages. So let's here I'm gonna do dart pub get http package. This is the first package that we need, and then we also need stripe. Let's go ahead and install them. So hopefully both of them has been installed. All right, so now over here, the very first thing we want to do, final string API key, this one, and then here we're gonna put our stripe secret key. We don't have it yet, we'll get it. Okay, that's the first thing. And then over here we're gonna do final URI and URL object from HTTP package, and then here we're gonna do URI dot HTTPS. We're going to use this one, and then here we'll have API stripe.com, and then here I think we also need to mention the endpoint. So it is B1, and then checkout, and then sessions, this one. Okay, now we don't have HTTPS yet here, but we'll work on that step by step. Okay, and after that, so since we have the URI over here, okay, so we need to create a body that we should send to this URI. So here we're gonna do final map string. So if you're coming from Flutter background, or if you have worked with map, you know that map takes key and value. So our key is string, value would be string as well. All right, so over here we are going to say payment method types, payment method types, this one, and it takes something like this, and this all comes from actually Flutter, not Flutter, the Stripe documentation. And then here mode, we're gonna say payment. Now as you do that, make sure that you spell them correctly, and then here success URL. So once the payment is successful, here Stripe will let you know that it was successful through a URL, and you have to register the URL here, otherwise it will get error. I mean, Stripe doesn't know how to get back to you. Success.html. Now this one still doesn't exist, we'll create that, and then here cancel URL, make sure that you spell them correctly, env app URL. So here we're gonna do cancel.html like this. Okay, and most important one, which is a metadata, we're gonna send to Stripe. And here Stripe has something called order ID. We need to send our order ID to Stripe, so thus Stripe would be able to keep track of our order ID. So our order ID name is order num. Okay, all right, so we have this ready. So we're going to send payment type, and the Stripe we are using for payment, because it could be a different mode. For example, if you refund money, so that's not a payment, I believe. And then the success HTML page, and cancel if you cancel the order. And then of course app URL, this would point to our domain, okay, eventually. Right, I do see that we have email error, so for now just keep as it is. All right, so since this has been done, now we're gonna continue to work. And remember, earlier at the top we have this data list. Okay, so data list itself have all the items. Now we need to go through it, we need to loop through it. The reason we're going to loop through it, the first reason is because it will have many items, right? This data list, and this data list, many items, they might have different prices. So for each item we need to tell Stripe the price and their name, amount, total amount, the number of items, because each one may have different items, because on the same cart you may have 2 t-shirts and 4 pair of socks and 2 pairs of jeans, so like that. So that's why we need to process all this data. So here we're going to declare a variable for loop int I 0, and then I data list, data, I think we call it data list dot length over here, and then we'll continue it. So the first thing from data list here, let's do final and element. We're gonna take the data list, and from here, since it's a map, I believe, well, was it a map? It's a list actually. So we can access each of the item using the index itself, using element at function. Okay, and then here we're gonna get the price for each item. So here we're gonna do decimal dot parse this one, and here element dot price this one. So here we're gonna say that it's not null, and then over here var price double, here price, well, we are not using any of them, we're going to use this one, floor, and then scale to double. Okay, so whatever the price we get from here, we're going to convert it to double, and we'll make sure that it has 2 points after dot. So that's the point. For example, with this line we'll make sure, say, $12.30. if our total price, if our item price is $12.30, with this we're gonna make sure that we keep the last 2 points after this digits. So that's what happens here. And then final int price, or price int, because that's how I'm naming them over here. So here we're gonna do price double, and then here we're gonna convert it to int. So now this one would become like this, 30. because that's how Stripe accepts it. Because when you give it to Stripe, you need to give it total integer, so convert it to integer, and Stripe will handle that. Okay, now here we're going to create a variable var amount sum price double, and here we'll have element dot cart number. So cart number would tell you the number of items you have. So this price we are going to send to Stripe, and this one, the one that below, keep for ourselves in the database. Okay, send to Stripe. So otherwise you'd be confused why here we are doing price int, which we are converting to int, and then we are also getting the total price for a certain item using double. As I said, that for example, say you have three t-shirts, so say first t-shirt the price is this, and then you have total 3, so you need to multiply that, so that's the total sum for t-shirts. Okay, but of course you may have other amount, you may have other items, as I said, socks. So that's why we are going through the loop. Okay, so to detect one by one, and then here we say amount total. This one, amount total is amount total plus amount sum. This one. So I hope it's a basic math. You understand how it works, because first time it is always 0, but then when you run the loop first time, remember it was initially 0, right? When you run the loop first time, this is gonna get added to it, and next time when you run the loop again, say for example socks, so it will take this amount, and this is the socks price, so this would be the total amount. Okay, total amount for all the items in the cart. Okay, so that's how it works. All right, and since this has been done over here, now here we can do body dot all, and this is a map. All right, now inside this over here we're going to do line items, and then here I'll have I, the variable, and then over here price data, and then here we're gonna do currency. Make sure that you spell them correctly. I don't think I should have it here actually. Okay, right, and USD. Now you could ask, what is this line data? So if you work with accounting, when you count items, these items and related information is called line items. That's just a name. Okay, they call it line items in accounting when you count your products item price and related information like the dollar, the currency, the title, everything. You put something called a line item. Okay, so I'm going to copy this and put it here. Now the first one was price data, currency. Now here we're gonna do something called a product data, and then here we're gonna have name. So this is our product name, and how do we get that? Here we'll have element dot title. Okay, so this would be our product name. So will it make sense? So we'll continue like this. So I'm going to copy this and put it here, and here unit price, and we don't need this, so let's remove that. And here unit price is price int or double price int dot to string. Okay, so now with this we're going to give the total price, this one for certain item. Once again, go back to t-shirt. Per t-shirt, this is the price, right? And we make sure that it is a string, but in this manner, not using dot. Okay, and then over here I'm going to copy this again. Price unit over here, we don't need any of this. Here we're gonna say quantity. And how do you get the quantity? We already have the quantity. So here we're gonna do element dot cart number dot to string. Okay, so you see, when you submit this information to Stripe, then you are giving it price, unit price, and total item number for certain product like t-shirt. Then Stripe internally, once you send this on, Stripe would internally calculate this for you. So yeah, you don't have to do it, but when we submit in our database, we have to do it manually. So that's the idea. Okay, so once this is done over here, the other thing we need to do, we need to submit in our database order detail, this one, and then here we'll have a query dot insert. So here, once again, this is a map, and here we are going to submit our information. So the first one is user ID. So here we'll have user ID at the top that we had. Amount, we'll have amount, I think we also have sum, this one, and then order num. So order num, and then product ID, element dot ID, and then title, element dot title, price, element dot price, and number, element dot cart number, and then pic, which is the picture, element dot thumbnail, and created at. So here date time, here updated at, so make sure you wrote them, all of them, correctly. So now for each item, once again, take the examples from shirt and socks together. So this one would insert the shirt information. So once again, this is a loop, right? You have total two types of products. One is shirt and other is socks. So the shirt would run first time, and we'll calculate this information. Some of them would go to our database, and some of them to to Stripe. So over here, this would go to Stripe first time, and then we insert in our order detail database. Now this is gonna happen for shirts, right? And then in the loop we have second item, and then that would be for socks. So we'll do calculation. So the idea is, when you submit or place an order in your database and Stripe, for each item you have to submit the information separately. At least you have to keep the record of each of the items. So in our database, this is going to insert immediately. But of course, when you go to Stripe, we are going to give all the information in one time. So this is going to go to a loop, right? So this is going to add more items in next loop. So on the top of this is going to add more items. So that's how it works. Now, since this is done, we're going to continue in next section. Okay, so since we are done with this last time in last section, now we continue. So after submitting our order details in our order detail table, over here we have to do the order submission itself, so which is the total order submission. So here we're gonna do order dot query dot insert. Okay, it's always a map, and then here it is a little bit simple because we have detail explanation in order details. Okay, so here we have user ID and user ID and amount detail, amount total actually. So we'll have a field in our database. Here we do amount total dot to string fixed. So we also want to keep two numbers after our strings section, and then over here we're gonna do order num, and then here order num. Okay, I think this one. Okay, right, and then created at and updated at. Now for this two, I'm going to go ahead and have it here, and that's it. Okay, all right, so that's the first step. And then over here, since we have this would be ready, so we can go ahead and actually submit our information in Stripe. So post this to Stripe. Now earlier you'll see that at the top we have this URL, so this is what we have, and then this is what we'll have. We'll get that soon, and then these are this information. Remember, when it goes through loop, each time we add this one, so it keeps added, and then we also submit in the database of order table. But this one, even though we add, but it doesn't go to Stripe yet, so it's adding up information. So once we are out of the loop, once we are done with this, and then you want to go to Stripe, because you have to make sure that this has been inserted for each item, and then this had been inserted as the total order, and then you go to Stripe. Now you don't go to Stripe first. Okay, so when we are done with the local business, then we go to Stripe. So here we'd say response, and then here we'll say await http dot post. We're gonna do post, and inside this here we'll have URL, which we already have. I guess we need to import that. Did we import that? So what's the error? Undefined. I do believe that we need to import it. So import package. We don't need Vania. We need HTTP. Looks like it doesn't get recognized. HTTP. Well, if it doesn't, then we can write it manually as HTTP. Right, looks like it still doesn't recognize it, and let's come and check over here. Oops, I thought I installed this, but looks like we haven't, so we need to import this one. So here I'm going to do pubget, dart pubget, I guess, dart pubget HTTP. Okay, and is it here? Well, it does say that it installed, and this was the same as last time. Not sure why though. So here I'm going to do it manually, HTTP, and I'm going to save, and then here I would do dart pubget. Let's see. Okay, and then over here looks like it is recognized. Cool. And then over here, so now here this one, data. Well, data would be our body, the body that we have added early. Body. Okay, all right, the body would be this one, Okay, it will have all the information. And the last part that we need to do, we need to add our headers. So we're going to mention how to add headers. Okay, so here, let me see if we can format the code. Okay, it looks like it's formatted like this, so let's skip that. So here we're gonna do headers, and headers itself would be a map. So here we need to put our information. The first one is authorization. And this one definitely would be our bearer key, but in this case that would be our API key. This one. Well, I think we have a typo, so we can keep it like this. And let me format it well. Okay, just like this, one space, otherwise it may cause error. So this API key is coming from Stripe. Now in general, when you work with Flutter frontend, you always send the API or bearer token as your own token, but in this case this is a token to Stripe itself, not our own personal local storage token. So just to remember that one. And then over here we need to mention content type, but this time in general we are not going to do this kind of JSON. Here we're going to do XWW form because we are going to do a form submission URL. So over here encoded, this one. So we are not going to do JSON. So a lot of time here we see application JSON. So let's see the difference, that why we are not doing JSON. So here you will see that application URL, this one, it sends information in key pair values, and the structure is revealed like this, as you see. So you'll see this kind of value on the URL. It's common for form submission. Now the other one is application JSON, and you have to submit information in this format. It's also suitable for complex data structures and standard JSON encoding. All right, so now it encodes using plus. So if there are places that need to be encoded, it put plus to secure it. Okay, so this is the basic difference. Now why we are doing it like this, because this is the format that Stripe wants from us. Remember, eventually we'll submit everything to Stripe, so Stripe wants this kind of format. So when we'll submit this one, if you are able to see the URL, you will see that on the URL it is structured like this, or if you print the value, you will see that it is structured like this. On the other hand, application JSON is structured like this. Anyway, so let's continue. So this is the format that Stripe wants, so that's what we're gonna give to Stripe. And then after that, we're gonna be here. You're gonna check response.status. In general, it should be status code, and Stripe also has status code thing. So over here, we're gonna create final session. It's a variable called session, and then JSON decode. So whatever comes from JSON, whatever comes back from Stripe, we decode that. Now this would be decoding in a map format because we are in Dart. Okay, so here we could print something like this. Check out session URL, and here we're gonna do something like this. So session URL, but in this case it should be URL like that. And let me check if we are missing anything. Okay, we're missing a comma inside, so make sure that you spell it correctly, otherwise we'll get an issue. So here we're gonna do response dot JSON. So let's send our code. We're gonna send 200 data their session ID, this one, and MSG here, payment successful. So if this fails, then we're gonna return something different. But of course, it looks like we already have this, so I'm going to comment this as for now. But in future, when we do more tests, most probably we would need this again. For this one, we can take this one and copy this and few changes that we need to make. The first thing we could do, removing this, actually, checkout session failed. And for now, we're gonna do empty data. And then here, response dot status code. So you can send the response, this one, and you can also send it here like this for now. Okay, so now we are almost ready, and since we are ready, in next section we are going to go to Stripe, and then we are going to get this key, the key that we wrote at the top, this one, and then we'll do postman test. Okay, since after this we are going to go ahead and continue, so here are a few things we'll do. Well, first I'm going to fix some typos because I've already done the test and I found that I have some typos here, so I'm going to fix them. The very first one is methods, so it should not be methods, it should be method. Okay, make sure that everything else is same, and then over here instead of unit price it would be unit amount. Okay, so these are the things that we need to fix. Well, since the fixing is done, now we need to go to the next part. The next part is about Stripe. Okay, so I've already logged in, so just anyway I'm gonna show you. So make sure you type in Stripe, and then here you need to click, but I have already logged in, so I see sign in. In general you should see dashboard, so let's go ahead and click on this, and then over here we'll be given a page like this, and then here you will have developers account or developers tab. Actually you need to click on that, and then here you need to create or get your API keys. So in general you want to get this key, secret key, so click on this and you gotta copy this one. So once you copy this, and then you need to come to your code. So the very first thing we want to do over here is set this right over here, so secret key. Okay, so we're gonna have to do it. All right, so secret key, set this up. All right, so we're gonna go for the next session now. So for next session we have to work with ngrok. Now ngrok is a proxy. Now it helps you to use HTTPS, which you can manage locally. Now, of course, this is just for testing. In real world, you need real domain, and then you also need SSL. But since we are testing locally, we can use ngrok. Now, if you don't know what is ngrok, I'll put the link below in this resources section, so you can go ahead and find it and install it. Okay, so you have to make sure that you install ngrok. Okay, now ngrok, if you Google about it, here you'll have like this ngrok. Okay, so go ahead and visit this page. This is the one. Okay, as you can see that it says. Anyway, I'm going to put a link so that you know how to install it, but if you follow their docs, you should be able to install it because it's pretty easy. Anyway, so once your ngrok is installed, all you need to do right here ngrok and then http and then your port number. So remember, our port number is 8001. In your case, maybe it's different. Make sure that you have the correct port number and then you hit enter. Okay, so once you have this one, you will get this https, and interestingly enough, here you will see that it says localhost 8001. So we are already mapping our localhost to an external UI. So this is an external UI right now. It's more like your domain name, but it's short-lived. And of course, it has some limitations, but we're not going to care about that one because we don't need these limitations anyway. So I'm going to copy this one. All right, and then once you copy this one, you need to get your postman. Okay, all right, and then instead of your local address over here, you can put in your ngrok and API place order. Remember, our route name was place order, this one, right? So you have to put your route name and make sure before that you have API. And then over here you should have this map. Okay, now this map is for testing order, okay, because we are going to place an order. So you should go ahead and have this. If you don't have this, check the resources section and you will get this map. And once you get this map, you'd be able to just put it here. But at the same time, over here, because we are going to do it, so we need this authorization header. Okay, so we need to have an this bearer token. Okay, this bearer token, you have to have this token. Where to get the token? Of course, remember in your earlier section we have seen how to do the login. So once you do login, it will return a token. Get the token and put it here. Okay, and once you put it here, you're gonna do hit send. Okay, I've already done the test, so that's why I see this one. But anyway, so let's go ahead and do it. Okay, right, so we get this payment successful, and which is awesome. And after that, if you check over here, we'll also see a lot of logs here. Okay, so this is a checkout session URL, and the session URL actually is coming from here, which we have printed out before. Okay, all right, cool. So this was one of the longful moment that we have worked with one method. So most of the part has been done, but we still need to continue. Okay, so after all this, we are going to ready to test. Now to test this, we need correct data. Now first I'm going to use Postman to test this thing. Now over here in our Postman, we have this JSON data, as you can see over here. So you can check this data from the link or in the course resources section, it's given there. And then over here, you also need to make sure that first you put your URL correctly or endpoint, and at the same time make sure that you have your bearer token. All right, okay, now let's go ahead and hit send. All right, now of course here we see that server side error placing order. Okay, all right, now here we are going to do quick debugging. Now to do that, over here I'm just going to go ahead and copy this. Okay, and I'm going to little bit modifying this thing. Okay,
And then over here, just for the purpose over here, I can say test purpose. Okay, test purpose. And then over here we could do 200 and 200. Okay, all right. So with this, we got to make sure that we don't have any issues over here. Now let's hit send. So it looks like the first line is correct, which means that we don't have any issue with this thing, which means we get our data. Okay, and then I'm gonna put one here. Okay, just to check which line is causing the issue. So here we are, and hit send, and looks like we hit again 500. Now this 500, of course, we know that it was supposed to be here, this section, because we are inside try catch close. So this is what is being thrown over here. So this tells us that this line is the problem. Now to be confirm more on this, what we could do, we could just simply go ahead and comment this out. But of course, then we'll have this tons of issues, as you can see, data list, this and that. There's also a problem. So for example, I'm gonna do just like this. Okay, just to make sure that most probably this is an issue. Okay, our server is still running. Okay, most probably we have other errors. Okay, yes, we do have an error since we did the save. So it looks like this kind of saving doesn't work. All right, so just anyway, I'm going to move this up. Let's hit it, save it, and then I'm gonna hit enter. I mean send. Okay, test purpose. So here's this thing. We are sure that this line is causing the problem, because if we put this log here, we don't have any issues. If we put it here, we have issues. Okay, all right. So this is what's going to be the problem, and then let's modify it like this. Final cart list and cart list data. Okay, and then I'm going to comment this out. So what we did, we didn't decode this data. Now the reason is because here this is already in correct format. Actually, this data, this is already in correct format. Now if it is so, then most probably we don't need to decode. I'm going to put some logs over here right now. So with that, we're gonna confirm that maybe this decoding was the problem. Okay, all right, because if we already have data correct format, we can just simply pass it to from JSON, and it should be fine from there. We don't need that. Okay, so let's go ahead and save it, and let's see we're gonna hit this one or not. Okay, so it looks like we don't have any issues up to here. Okay, cool. So this is a step-by-step process where you make sure that nothing goes wrong. And I'm gonna put one more here, and let's try it. Okay, since we are on it, so set up more points and you'll see that it works. Okay, so far so good. So we are good over here as well. Now this thing could throw error, but anyway, it doesn't matter, because a lot of time when you insert data in table, and if some datas are missing, or if some datas are null but not supposed to be null, then we throw error.
And a lot of time, you know that these fields, if you misspell them, then you get error, or if you misspell them here, you get error. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if we can insert the order detail in our order details table. So let's go ahead and save it. Okay, so it looks like yes, we have an issue, and this issue is coming from here, because once I moved it up there, then we are getting this error, right? So definitely this part is having an issue. Okay, so now let's come over here and change this one. We don't want to do it like this. Maybe we can do, say, a.toString, and with this we'd be able to catch the error. Okay, and after hitting this here, we do see that, okay, it says that something is wrong over here during insertion in MySQL server and date time. So it's saying that incorrect date time value for date time. So, and then if we do come over here at the top, here we do see that I'm missing this part over here. So this brackets, and as well as this one. Okay, so hopefully we'll not have any issue after that. So I'm going to take that down and put it here, and we're going to see that whether we are able to create an order over here. Okay, all right, so now let's go ahead and hit enter or send. Wow, so looks like yes, this time it worked. So this time we can go ahead and check our MySQL workbench. So here we do see that we have user ID 43. This is our user ID, and we have placed 2 items and tables and chairs. That's what we see. If you see that at the top, chair and tables. And at the same time, if we go ahead and check our orders table, so let's go ahead and check our orders table, and here we do see that we have an order number, which is this one. So here order number, the last 4 digits, 9867, and here we do see that 9867. So which tells us that we have been successfully done this thing. So that's cool. So which means this part is working. So the next part is that we're going to see if we are able to send the response to Stripe over here. So let's go ahead and check on this. So this time we don't need to do anything one more time, but we can go ahead and place an order one more time. And if it is successful, we'll see that it is successful. And most probably we might see a response back here as well. Let's go ahead and try it. Okay, so here now we have new issues. So invalid request thrown because the response status code was 403, status code was configured, client error, bad syntax, blah blah blah, and secret key required. So most probably please use secret API key. You can find it is there. So looks like the other issue that over here Stripe we are having. So this is, it says that our secret has a problem. So this is what we need to go ahead and check. Since from the log we understand that it's talking about secrets over here, that the API call cannot be made with publishable key. So here I think I made a mistake. So we got the publishable key. It needs a secret key to actually place an order, the publishable key, which is very public. So let's go ahead and get this one. So I got the wrong one. So it should be the key from here. So let me go ahead and copy, and now I'm going to replace this. Let's go ahead and replace this guy. All right.
So hopefully this time it should be fine. Now let's go ahead and hit enter one more time over here. Okay, so here we do get that it says payment is successful. This is what it says. And because this is also supposed to be our log over here. Okay, so this part is quite okay right now, so we don't have any issues. Now of course, a few things. First, we need to go ahead and check our Stripe. Now to see the information on Stripe, you need to click on this logs over here, and in general you can also match your time, because this is the time that I'm looking at it right now in my computer, because this is the time where I was making the payment. And if you click on this, and in general you'll see, okay, here is a payment ID, and pretty much that's it. Now you can confirm your payment ID, which is this one, and this payment ID has been seen over here, CS test B17U, right? And the last digit is Q. So this is exactly, we see that B17U, the last digit is Q. So which means that, okay, so we are able to place an order over here in terms of payment. So there are a few other steps that we need to go ahead and do, because once this is done over here, we need to get back to our client and tell the client that payment is successful. So we need to work on that one as well. Okay, so this is something called webhook. So next section we are going to work on the webhook, and then we also need to build this 2 pages, the one that we see over here, success and cancel, and after that the whole payment would be done. Okay, so now we continue to work on another method, and this method is also related to payment, but this has to be a public method. And here we're gonna do router.post, and then here we're gonna call it webhook, and then here we're gonna have it at order controller, I believe, dot webhook. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead to this order controller over here. So let's go ahead and create a new method, and here it would be also type future response, and then webhook, this one, and we'll get a lot of information, and we're gonna call it request. All right, now this webhook is a public route, as you can see over here, which means it is not protected by any middle layer. Anybody is able to access it. But this webhook actually would be accessed from Stripe, because once you make payment to Stripe, Stripe needs to know it back, that how everything works. It means like using this one, Stripe will tell us back the payment was done. Okay, because right now after payment we do see that we have a lot of logs, but this log, we don't have access to the log. So Stripe found a way to create or communicate with us. Now in general we call it webhook, which means that we have to register this endpoint in Stripe, and then Stripe will get back to us using this endpoint. Now of course this endpoint would be also attached with our IP address or domain or URL, domain name. So of course each domain name is unique, so eventually Stripe will find us to talk back to us using this one. Okay, so that's you have to know. And then let's come back over here, work here. Here we're gonna create a variable final, and we're gonna call it event, and then we're gonna get everything from request object, Now this would be coming from, once again, from Stripe. As long as Stripe has this one, it will send us HTTP information through this one. As it sends, we'll grab all the information, and then here we're gonna check event. All right, and event type. So here we're gonna check event type. So once you make the payment on Stripe, a lot of things happens. So these are called events, and over here, since Stripe will get back to us with every information that happened in Stripe using this one, so we'd be able to grab them and check them, because once you write this one, that means you're grabbing all this information. Okay, so here you're gonna do check out dot session dot completed. So which means that the checkout session is done. In general, this refers to a success checkout session. Okay, so here we're gonna do final session. If we match this event, remember, once you make the payment, a lot of things will happen. We are looking for checkout session completed. Okay, this one, make sure you spell it correctly. And then from event, we're gonna get data and then object, this one, and then we'll have another one, final order ID, this one, and here we're gonna say session, and here we'll have metadata. And on Stripe there would be something called order ID. We are going to look for that one. And this is important because now we know the order ID, so we would be able to update our information in our database. So if you take a look over here, so this is our orders table. In orders table there is something called status, and you see that all the status is 0 over here, which in general this is a default value. Here, when the payment happens and when you say this one, that refers to that payment is pending. Okay, so what happens, you'll see that at the top we have order detail, we insert it, and then we have this one. By the time this gets executed, actually no payment was done, so that's why this status is 0 over here, this column. Okay, so this has to be updated later. Okay, now we can only update after this things happens, right? Because this is the thing where the payment happens. Okay, but after payment happening, we know about it using this webhook, so we can grab this order ID. Okay, so this is what is happening over here. And of course here we do have order num. This is in our database, but this one would be coming from Stripe, because Stripe would take our order num and save the order ID here. So whatever the value you have here or here, Stripe will save that. Remember, we have a reference ID, right? So Stripe is going to save that, and Stripe will save in this kind of order ID column in Stripe database. So hopefully it makes sense. And then if we have this information, we could do order dot query dot where. So now we need to update our own database table, which is order num, and we're gonna update it with order ID, this one. Okay, and then here we're gonna do update, and here we're gonna do status 1. Okay, so what's gonna happen once we get the order ID? So we update our database column using this one, which means that
eventually it will get updated here. So that's the idea. Okay, and once this is done over here, we can simply go ahead and return a response. So the response, we could say that return response dot JSON, and simply we might say payment success. Okay, all right. And if it's not, then we can also return response dot JSON here unknown events. Okay, with this the error should be gone. So this is one of the most important. Remember, when you make payment in any kind of platform, Stripe, PayPal, or whatever it is, in general they'll all give you a webhook. Now it's just not about payment, it's all about, say for example, you do some kind of interaction with the third-party applications, and they should return you data. They only return you data through a open endpoint, which is like this. Okay, all right, so hopefully you understood this part. Okay, so since we are done with this, our next step would be building a webhook. What is webhook? Webhook would help you to communicate with you and third-party server. And why this is different than any other third-party server? You see that if you have a third-party server, so it's a server, it's an app, and then you just post something, right? In general, or what you do, it's your app, you get something, so you just make one request. Either you post and you return, either you ask for data and you return again. But webhook, we need webhook. That's because for simultaneous and continuous communication, when this kind of thing happens, actually there isn't any actual session. But if you have a webhook, so here you will have a third party, your app, and then it's a third party server, and then in third party server we'll register a hook. Okay, register a hook. So in general this is called webhook. Now hook, you can just also think like here hook is an endpoint. So if this is our server, which is Stripe, so in Stripe we'll register one endpoint. Okay, and we'll also have the same endpoint in our app. Okay, like in our route file. So what's gonna happen once you do this thing, so you have endpoint here and in the third party server. So this way the third party and your app can continuously talk, and they create a session. And the benefit of creating a session, so there's a session, and the session can help storing data, temporary data. Okay, store data or info, but of course these sessions are very short-lived. Okay, so that's the benefit of having a webhook. So hooks are just webhook, and hooks could be any endpoint. So we are going to make a request to our Stripe server, which means that we are going to send information to Stripe. Stripe will process that, and you have to wait. And once the processing is done, Stripe will get back to us again. And in between there will be a short memory. In the memory there will be some information, and that information could be read by our app. And once again, later on, after reading this information, our app can go back to Stripe again, or third-party server. So it's like four ways of communication. First, app to Stripe, okay, Stripe to app, then, and then again app to Stripe. actually 3 ways. Anyway, so this only happens because if you have webhook. If you just have simple app post and get request, either you just post data and done, either you just get data and done. So it doesn't happen in post or get. You just have one single request. In a sense, you just push the button once and you do one thing and done. But here, when you have webhook, you're gonna have series of events that happens one after another. Okay, so that's why we need this thing, because actual payment is complicated. All right. Okay, so this is what we had last time, and we also saw that we have this session ID. Actually, this is our session ID. If you go ahead and see it carefully, that we are passing session ID, right? So right now we are going to use this session ID. Okay, so in fact we are ready to go ahead and use the session ID. Okay, few things. We can go ahead and use the session ID. Remember, we just printed it here. This session ID, as I was talking early, so as I was saying, that it creates a session. So this session has an ID, and actually we already have this ID, and this ID has been created by Stripe. And after creating this ID, Stripe has given us. Now we are going to go ahead and use that session ID and talk back to Stripe again. Okay, so there are a lot of things going on. Even before we actually go ahead and create an actual hook, because we didn't create a webhook yet. Okay, we have to create one. We can still go ahead and use the session ID. Okay, and how we are going to do that? Now, to be able to do that, one of the things that we need to do first, we need to use a third-party provider, which is ngrok. In last session, I showed you how to get ngrok and how to work with that. So here, I'm going to go ahead and start my ngrok HTTP, and then I think we are on 8001. All right. So I'm going to get this one. Okay, and then I'm going to open up my browser. Here I'm going to put this, and then actually I can put anything like that, it doesn't really matter. And after that, here I'm gonna say session ID, and I'm going to put this guy, this one. I'm going to copy this, but the thing is that it could be short-lived, so you can always get a new one. And it looks like we have an issue. So here it says that 404. The reason is this one, because this URL has been changed, because we are using a new ngrok URL. So let me go ahead and copy that and make sure that you replace it with a new one. And now hopefully it should work. Okay, right, so this is our new data, which is session ID. We can go ahead and put it here. Okay, so if we try to do that, actually it'll try to load the page. So as you see, it says loading, but of course there are a lot more mechanism about this. So it'll try to load. Okay, now to be able to work with this loading, you need to come over here, and then you will have a public folder. So I'll put in the resources section, get that public folder and replace the original public folder with this folder. Okay, now this folder will have CSS images and some JS information, and at the same time we see that cancel, payment and success, all these things. Okay, so now of course it's not working, and don't worry, in general it should pop up a page where you go ahead and make the actual payment. But even before that, actually, we need to do few other things, as I was talking about actually creating a webhook. Okay, so here, so now let's go ahead and create our webhook. So here I'm going to do future, and then the type is response, and then over here we're gonna call it webhook, and it will have request and then here we're gonna do final event request dot all. So we are going to get all the information. This would get called by, this one would get called by Stripe, and as it calls, it will give us some HTTP information, and we'll get that information in this object, and we are getting all of them. But here it will have many events, so we are particularly interested in one type of event, and we're gonna check whether the event match or not. So here we're gonna do checkout.session.completed. So when we hit this one, we would know that the payment has been successful. Okay, so we are looking for this event, and the payment, if the payment has been successful, here we're gonna say final session, and then here we're gonna get from there data and object from it. Okay, and final order ID. So we'll get an order ID, and this actually, this order ID, the one that we have created early, but this the same order ID is saved in Stripe session, so we are reading that back. So here order ID would be inside something called, okay, I had it correctly, session metadata, and then here we're gonna do order ID, this one. So this would be in our session. Remember, from session earlier we have gotten this ID, but session will have a lot more information. One of the information is order ID, so we're gonna get that, but we only get that if we find this is correct, which means the payment actually has been successful. So we need to make sure that one. And then here we could say check out session completed for order ID. Okay, let me do this thing here. Okay, it's better I do capitalized. Okay, right. Okay, cool. And then here we're gonna call our order table, and then we're gonna call this query builder, and then where we're gonna look for our order ID over here. So in our database, the order ID is saved as order num, and the one that we get back from Stripe, we called it order ID, and here we're gonna do update status. Okay, so here we're gonna do status 1. Okay, and here after that we're just gonna say simply return, okay, response. Here we're gonna say event received. This is the thing that we want, and now the error is gone. Now since you have this webhook here, you're going to register it here as well. So here I'm going to say router dot post, and then here we're gonna say webhook, and then here we're gonna say I think we need it inside the order controller. Order controller dot webhook. Okay, right. So with this, we'd be able to communicate with the Stripe server continuously, okay, inside our session. Okay, so now let's go ahead and save this thing. Now we are done with creating the webhook, but there are more steps to follow. Now we need to go back to Stripe dashboard and create or register this webhook and get some of the information from there. So let's go to our dashboard and we go to developers, and here you will see webhook. All right, now I'm going to create a new endpoint. So here you need to click on endpoint and you have to register your endpoint name. So here, remember, we have this one. So I'm going to copy this, and the endpoint name is webhook, but it's inside API namespace. If you see over here, this is inside API, and then for payment, okay, just like this. And we have to select some events, so let's go ahead and do that. And I think here within this, let's look for our events, the one that we are interested in listening. Okay, looks like not that one. Okay, not this one. It was not the charge. Okay, let's check on checkout. Yes, this checkout and this session. Okay, checkout session completed. Why? Because here earlier we have seen that we want to listen to this one, checkout session completed, and then add events. Okay, all right, so add endpoints. Okay, right. So as you see that it says that it's waiting for events. So this is the time that we go ahead and do the actual request. Okay, all right. And now for this time, there are a few other changes we still need to make. As I said that early, you have to get this information, and once you get them, we have to make some changes in this code as well. Okay, well, not actually in this code. You have to come to this env file and make sure that this URL, you change that. Okay, but in real world it would be a domain name. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. You don't need to change so many times again and again. Make sure that you do it correctly, and you have to save it. And okay, after that I'm going to close this, and let's see, are there any other places that we need to change? Just let's go through it quickly. So here we have this payment one. Okay, right. So here, this one, we also need to get this public key. Unlike earlier, here is a secret key, but here you have to put your public key. Now to get the public key, once again, you can just come over here and copy this one. I've already done it, so I'm not going to copy that anymore. Just copy it and put it here. You have to do that. Okay, right. Now one thing before I continue, earlier you have seen that, so here we have success HTML, cancel HTML. So these are the pages now we have over here, success and cancel. Okay, all right, so I do believe we are ready, but there might be other issues along the way. We'll solve them if there are. So now one thing I want to do over here, I'm going to cancel this and restart the server. It's important. Okay, we are good. Okay, So it started, and then before we do final test, let me walk you through some changes that I had to make. The first one is over here. You have to have this async modifier. I think this is something that was missing in my code. So you have to have this one. And then when you do this test over here, so once you do a test, we have to get this session ID, right? Okay, so the thing we need to do, we need to get this one first. We're gonna put it here, and then make sure you do pay.html, make sure that one, and then you do session ID, make sure all the letters are small. So over here we need to put our session ID. So this would be our session ID. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this from here. Make sure that you copy it, and then I'm going to put it here, and I'm going to hit enter. And if you're using ngrok first time, you may need to allow this, and then it would start to open up, and then loading. So this is loading our information for making payment. So I'm going to just put some random information as my payment info, and I'm going to say pay. All right, so hopefully it would work this time. So it's processing the payment. It's still working there. Okay, so here we get that payment is done, and then over here we see that our API webhook has been called, and this is beautiful. We also see that our order ID is 459. Okay, awesome. So with this, actually we have done the payment, and then if you go and look for order ID 459, so let's go ahead and check it here, as I have done a lot of tests, so it's there. So here you see that order ID 459. Okay, so actually we can do one more payment to verify how it works, and you see the status is 1. Of course, these are the test data that I was doing all the time. Now over here, so let's try it one more time. What I'm going to do, I'm going to make a new order request. Okay, so here I'm going to hit send, and here I'll have a new session ID. I'm going to copy this. At the same time, if you come over here and refresh your order table, let's go to a new one. So here, this is a new order ID 540, and the status is 0, right? So this status is the one that actually gets reset from here once everything is done. What I mean by that, when your payment is done, eventually over here, you see that we set it to 1, the status, okay? Because otherwise, if you don't do it, the payment is incomplete, and you can only do it if you hear back from Stripe. Anyway, so the current situation over here, we have seen it's a 0, right? So 450, right? And status is 0. Now, if you come over here and let's try it again. So here I'm going to have pay, and it showed up, and all I need to do, replace the session ID. Okay, make sure that everything else is correct, hit enter. So it's loading. All right, okay, cool. So I'm going to try one more time, and then let's do this. Okay, right, so hopefully the payment would be done. It says done. Now I'm going to reload my table in another tab, and here we see the status is 1, 450, the status is 1. So it shows us our payment has been successfully done, and this is awesome. Okay, now if you do go back to Stripe board over here, if you refresh it, you will see that there are a lot of events that's going on. Okay, right, so these 2 events that we have done, which means that our payment has been successful. And here we also see that 200, and it says payment received, event received. Now this is coming from here. So as I said, that when everything is done over here, we go to the Stripe server, we have this information and we register everything, and in the session Stripe gives us information and we update our data, and once we update our data we go back to Stripe. Okay, go back to Stripe. How did we go back to Stripe? Using this information. We told Stripe that okay, event has been received. So over here, this one. But most importantly, we also see 200. Okay, that's the thing that you want to see. And over here you see that this was our session ID. So this is how you confirm. This is a cancel URL. Remember, this is set in our env file. So cancel. And then over here there will be some metadata which we can see. The other one, we see that our email address, the username, the one that made the payment, and this is the order ID. Most importantly, you should say this: when your payment is successful, eventually this order ID, which in our database as well, this one over here, you'll also see it here, because a lot of time you may actually get 200 here, but there might be other issues. Okay, eventually you'd confirm. If you see the order ID, that means Stripe has saved this order ID and it is also giving us back. So it's very important. So you can go through the data, status complete, success URL. Okay, now this success URL is this one over here. Okay, right. Okay, so that's the basic thing. And of course you can also view other logs here if you want. Okay, these are also some good logs to analyze once your payment is done or not done. Okay, cool. And now this UI, if we click on this, we cannot go back, but if we are on Flutter app, we'll be able to go back, because over here we don't process this going back thing, so we get error. But on Flutter UI, once eventually we'll integrate everything, we'll see that okay, we can go back. Okay, cool. So with this, our payment section has been done. Eventually our payment section has been done, so we're happy for that. So we're going to continue from here and we are going to build a new API. Now what are we going to cover in this section? So let's see. So here you will have like this. You will have like a profile section over here. Okay, and the first thing we'll see this order addresses over here. Sorry, orders. And then orders are delivered, finished, or cancelled. All the states would be here. Okay, all right. So when you click all, we'll see all of them. You'll have status for delivered. Okay, you'll also have for cancelled, finished, like that. Okay, this is what we want to do. All right, so now to do that, first over here we are going to continue router.post, and here I'm going to do Well, I do believe I still need this one here. Anyway, so here we're gonna do get order list. Okay, order controller get order list. We can save this, but it's gonna throw an error to us because that method doesn't exist. Okay, so here we're gonna do get order list request and request this one, and after that would be good. If you save it again, this time the error would be gone. Okay, all right, so that's the first thing that we did. All right, okay, so inside this over here, once again we are going to create a variable final, and we're going to call it user ID, and definitely we are going to get it from auth.id function, ID over here, and then from there we're going to do final status, and here we'll have a status, and it's the status that we want to, you know, the kind of order details you want to get. We'll get that one. And what kind of status is that, or that would be? For example, if you see here, it doesn't have any kind of status, which means that it could be any order. Okay, now order status could be delivered, where it means that it's been already delivered, and order status means finished, which means it's been completed. All right, and then over here canceled, so which means canceled by user or the vendor. Anyway, so we will pass this kind of status from an input variable, which is called status, from front end. Okay, so that's why we called it status, but of course you can call it anything you like, it doesn't really matter. Okay, well, the very first thing here I want to do, let's go ahead and try this. Here I can call it order list, and it's a list of order, and this means all of them. Okay, so here we're gonna do await and order, and that here we do query, and then here we're gonna, now with this actually we don't, the very first one, okay, here we don't care about any certain type of order. It is all, which means that it includes finished order, cancels order, delivered order, like that. Okay, and then here user ID. Okay, all right, and then here we're gonna do get, which means get all of them. Okay, right, and it looks like over here we're going to have fix async. Okay, right, and well, let's continue from here. We're gonna come back to that a little later, and then here we're gonna do return response.json. Now here we are going to return code 200. Okay, data order list, and then here we're gonna do msg. Okay, and then we would say success returning the order list. Okay, like that. And over here we're going to return 200. Good to go. And after that, so this is what we're going to return. Okay, this is the general status. Now you do see that here we are not using it yet. We'll use that. Okay, so first, as long as the user ID matches, okay, as long as the user ID matches, we're going to return everything, okay, for that certain user. Now here, of course, you need to copy this one, okay, feature response, otherwise it might cause error. Okay, so I'm going to put it here. All right, so let's go ahead and save it. Okay, all right, we're good to go now. Now this time actually we can go ahead and test. All right, so here let's see, furniture API, this one. Sorry, I have a lot of APIs. Anyway, hope it's not confusing. Anyway, so here I'm going to add a folder. Actually, the folder should be orders. Okay, and then here I'm going to add a new request. Okay, all right, and here I'd say get order list. But I know that we are missing something like our place order. Okay, we'll fix that later, so let's just focus on this one first. Okay, get order list. So it'd be here. In our case, actually we are doing a post request, but it doesn't matter, you can also do get request. Okay, all right, so here something like this too, and here API, and here I do believe that API get order list. Okay, all right, so let me go ahead and double check this one. So here we're gonna just do get order list, this one. Okay, all right, so one of the other thing that we need to make sure right now that we are logged in. Okay, because it needs you to have bearer token, this one. Now we can always log in if you don't have your token saved, so just to go ahead and make a login request, and then you'd be able to get it. All right, so let me put it down. Now get order list, and then here we have to have our bearer token, and then here this one, get order list, and then here we do send. Okay, so it did say that the it's invalid token, and now I do have a thing to check over here. Not only that, actually I also have the port number wrong. I do believe it was 1, so let's go ahead and try that. API get order list. Okay, cool. Yeah, you see that we got all of them, right? So here we have this and this and this and this. So I have a couple of orders in my backend actually, and we have seen all of them. Actually, a lot of order. Now I was doing all of this for testing purpose, so that's why I have so many of them. So this is correct, and now we're going to continue. Now this is generally we return all of them, but what if the user applies a condition? So this is where we need to continue with if statement. So here we're gonna say if status equal, say, canceled, the first one. Okay, canceled. I mean, we can start with canceled, and so we'll do one thing, otherwise we're gonna do another thing. Okay, so here we're gonna say else. All right, okay, and here we also have to return something. So the first thing I'm going to do, just copy all of this and put it here, because it would be pretty much a repetitive process. The only thing here you might do separately is attaching another where. Okay, so here we could do another where. So where, here we could do status. Okay, so status, say for example status equal 3. Now if you remember earlier that we have a status column in our table. If you remember that this one, okay, earlier, that we have, when we set it to 1, it means that it has been successfully updated, the payment has been done. Now if the status is cancelled from our user side, if it is somehow cancelled during that time, we are going to set it to 3. Okay, so in the database, when we cancel an order, then it would be set to 3, right? So we are looking for this condition. So from front end, the condition would be set as cancelled in a string format, and then for that one, in our database, we'll make a query. If the status is 3, then we are going to return all the data for that. Okay, success returning the cancel order list. Okay, cancel order list. All right, just like that. Okay, so here we are going to save it. All right, now we need to go to our database. Okay, so this is our current situation, right? We have all these IDs, right? And these are all status equal 1, which means that they're all successful. Say somehow I change this to 3, okay, and then I change another one to 3, okay. All right, and let's go ahead and apply. Make sure that they take effect. I'm gonna close. Okay, now since this has been done, over here we can actually send a status. Okay, so here we could do status and say cancelled. All right, cancelled, CNCE. I believe that should be, is that LLE? Let me go ahead and make sure how we spelled that. Okay, CELED, cancelled. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit it. All right, so here we're gonna see only 2 of them, right? And this is correct. The reason is because in our case only 2 items have this status equal 3, so we are only returning 2 of them, and then which we see over here, 2 items. This is awesome, right? And if we do want, we can also see their ID. So order number 153 and the other one is 828. So you can go ahead and confirm 153, this one, 828, so which is working. All right, now what about say delivered? Okay, so here delivered, so we can work like this where we say it's delivered. So now we are gonna go ahead and in fact we can copy all of it. I would say let's copy all of it. Okay, and then here I'm going to do another one, else if. All right, and then here, so let's go ahead and continue to work on this. All I need to do here, I need to do status equal delivered. Okay, and then here we're gonna do this one, and all we need to do matching 2. Okay, and success returning the delivered order list, So let's go ahead and save it, and this time instead of cancelled we can look for delivered. So let's go ahead and do it. Now here it says this empty. Why? The reason is, even though I made changes, but because I'm using MySQL Workbench, you have to apply it, otherwise it doesn't work. Now let's go ahead and save it, and here once again we see 2 of them. If you see the order 429, the first one, and 459, and if we go ahead and check that, 429, this one, and 459, so which means that actually it's working pretty well, just like as we expected. Okay, so this section is, I would say, I mean, all in our expectation. Now the last part that we need to do over here, actually over here for this one, we still need to continue to work. Now to do that, to continue to work on this, we actually need to here add a conditional block. So here we're gonna do status equal, when you say like you want to get all of them, so here we have cancelled, we have delivered. Now with this it should be all of them, right? Okay, so here we could do all, but when it matches all, we're going to return all of them. Okay, it doesn't really matter what's the condition. Okay, we're going to return all of them. And there is one more condition actually we need to check over here. Actually, you can add more of them, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to first put it here, whatever was there, and then here I'm going to add status. Okay, now what kind of status here you want to have? Okay, I would say paid, which means that order has been placed, but we don't know whether the processing has been done or not. Okay, all right, so that's why we did that. Now let's go ahead and copy this and put it here. Let me reformat the code, it looks a little ugly. Okay, right. All right, so now with this one, the paid section, here we need to add another condition dot where, and then here we're gonna do status equal 1. Okay, so this is the status that we want to add. And lastly, here we need to have another else. Okay, otherwise we're gonna get error. So this would be actually, in fact, nothing matches. Okay, so else here you could say no matching found. Okay, well, one could do 403, which is like forbidden, or 401, that's also fine. All right, okay, yeah, so all the status is ready there. Okay, now we could do one more test over here. This time I'm gonna do for paid. Let's go ahead and check, and of course for paid we have a lot more orders, I believe, because just a few of them has been turned into other type of orders. So these are all the paid ones where the status is 1. If you see that status is 1, if you randomly check any of them, you will see that the status is 1. Okay, so awesome. Once again, if you change it to cancelled, edit, we'll only see 2 of them. Awesome. All right, so with this we are done with returning this order list based on condition. Okay, so now we are going to continue with another endpoint. The endpoint name would be router.post, and here get order detail, this one, and then order detail. Okay, so you already get the idea. And then over here, so let's go ahead and create a new one. Here we'll say get order detail request. So once again, as always, you always want to verify whether the user logged in or not, and here Vania has given us awesome API for that, so you can just always use that one. And then here var status, so we want to check user status. Actually, sorry, it's not user status, it's the status of a button click. So here we're gonna call it status. Okay, right. I think we can also use it as final. We don't need to do it as var. And then over here we could do like this, final detail. Here we would say await order detail, this one, and then here we're gonna do query, and here we could do where. So we're gonna look for user ID, and here we'll say user ID, and we'll have another condition. So here we're gonna do where order num. Okay, order num here is let's say order num. So here actually, instead of doing like this, let's pass it as order num. Okay, order num, and it's better we also call it order num. Okay, so with this we'll get it, and here we say get. So what's gonna happen over here, so if you have the app like this, so you will have all of them. So you're gonna click on this detail one. As you click, you'll get the order number, okay, or order ID, this one, right? So after that we do the query and show the result. Right, so this is what we want to do. So hopefully it makes sense. And then over here we could do return. I think we can do return from here. Return response.json. So here we're gonna say code 200 and data detail MSG got the order detail. Okay, like this. But of course you could also be more specific, sorry, not specific, you could also be more protective. You can actually do a try catch. Okay, all right, so within it here, let's reformat our code. Install formatter. How come we don't have any formatter? I do believe that we have a formatter. Okay, so let's skip that one. I would just want it to format the code, but looks like it doesn't recognize for now. Oh, but it doesn't matter. Okay, all right. And then over here you could also return something different. Okay, all right, and we'll see if we can return sorry, here we could say 500 and 500 try catch. Okay, couldn't fetch the order detail. Could not fetch the order detail. Okay, let's see. Now of course this one data is empty because it's not going to work there. All right, let's go ahead and save it, and then here we're going to do Vania serve. Okay, good to go. And then here we are. We're gonna copy this, and then here I'm gonna add a new request, and here we're gonna call it order detail, and we're gonna do a post request. We're gonna put it here, and API order get order detail. Okay, all right, this one, and let make sure that your authorization is still there. Hopefully this is still valid. And then if you come over here, body form data, so we need an order ID. So here we go, and here we do have different order noms over here, as you can see that. Okay, anyway, now here we also have the order nom that is saved or stored. Okay, So we are going to get, for example, say this one. So I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to come over here and not like this, order num, this one. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how it goes. Okay, got the order detail, but here it says that it's all empty, so we don't have a valid information against this one. The reason is I do believe I also have a typo here. Sorry, today so many typos. Okay, cool. So these are the order detail, right? Okay, cool. Here you'll see that 2 information, and why this 2. The reason is because if you do see that here we are order details, so you are using this one, I believe, and this one has 2 items that we bought. Okay, so the first one was a chair. We bought 1 chair, and then we see 2 tables. I mean, this is weird, but anyway. Okay, so that's why both of them are being returned, and this is also the reason that why we use here get. Okay, so we are not looking for only one match, we are looking for many matches. For example, as you can see that here, order details. Okay, so here we have 2 items, but of course this is just a demonstration. In our case we have 1 chair and 2 tables. Okay, you get the idea. So yeah, whenever you click, everything is returned from your database just like this. Okay, all right, so with this we are actually done with this order detail API building. Okay, so now you're going to continue to work and do a different thing. So here we are going to work on the settings section, where you will have edit profile, payment method, and my address, and all of this thing. Okay, all right, so this is what we'll do right now. So the first one is edit profile, but before you edit, you have to get your profile data. Okay, so this is what we need to do now. So the first API we will develop is getting the profile, and then we'll edit profile. Okay, so let's continue. So here we are going to go ahead and do this one. Say for example, this is our profile section, and then router.post here get profile, and then over here profile controller, let's call it get profile. Okay, and now we need to be in our profile controller, this one. Okay, right, and right below it we are going to create this method. So let's do it. Here first we're going to start with future response, and get profile request. I think you should be very familiar by this time with this. Okay, right here, try catch. Okay, so as you see that as you want to get profile, you have to get user ID first. So here I'm gonna say user ID, auth ID. Okay, anytime you are inside a protected route, you always have to get user ID. Okay, final user, and then here we're gonna do await user query, and where ID equal user ID, and then we want to get the first match. In general there should be only 1 match. Okay, now to do this, over here we can just simply say copy. I think we have a mistake here, sorry, it should be 200, right? Wow, I didn't notice that it was in earlier section, but anyway, let's continue. Okay, All right, and so we are returning 200. Here we're gonna return user and then returned user. Could not get the user. Okay, all right, and then here we're gonna say it's empty. Here's 500. Okay, or like internal server. Okay, I think we should tag it as server error. This is better. Server error, because if we don't return well, if you don't return anything here, definitely you have error, right? Okay, cool. So we are going to restart the server, and here let's save this. And what's missing over here is async. Okay, all right. Since this is missing, let's see what else is going on here. It says that try correcting the name, user. What do we have? Did we name it differently? Let me go ahead and check it quickly. Okay, it's not doing differently. It just we need to import our user. Looks like we didn't import our user model. Okay, and let's go ahead and check about our model over here. So this is our user model. Okay, all right, so where we have used it, looks like none of these places we have used it. There should be one place here, this one. So I'm going to copy this path and put it at the top. Okay, make sure that you have imported everything, otherwise okay, now the problem has gone, so let's continue to work on this. So now we are going to work on our postman and check whether we can return this user. Okay, right. So inside this, I'm going to create a new folder. Let's call it profile, and a new request. Well, it looks like it automatically copied things from our earlier section, but in fact we don't need this. I think we can just save changes. Let me close this. Okay, right. So here we're going to do 127.01.01. I think 8001 API get profile. Okay, and well, over here the only thing we need to make sure that this header is correct. This guy, it should be correct, and inside body actually we don't need to send anything. All right, so there's nothing that we are sending, it's just the authorization get profile. So let's go ahead and test it. Yeah, we already get our profile, gender, birthday null, email, password, this and that. Okay, cool. So that means this part is working. So we are going to continue to work on this now, and the next part we want to work is edit, because you get the profile, now you have to edit the profile, right? So let's continue on this, and just like earlier, over here we can copy this and put it here, and we need to change the names quickly. So here we can say edit profile, edit profile, edit profile. Okay, and in profile controller, definitely let me go ahead and copy this guy, and here we're gonna say edit profile. All right, let's save it here, let's save it there. Okay, so hopefully we are good. But of course, edit profile requires more than this. It's not just this part. So basically the thing you want to do in edit profile, so as always you will have this user ID, and here the first thing you want to do, okay, so here we need to get the user name. As you will see that here we'll have name, his birthday, his gender, well, we can also do it phone number and description. All these things we have to get one by one. Okay, now we'll get them from our request.input variable. Okay, so which would be coming from our front end. Okay, so here we're gonna call it name. Okay, so you get the idea. So all of them would be the same thing: birthday, request birthday. All right, okay, final gender. Okay, so as you see, final phone, I think that should be okay. I do have an issue over here. It should be name, not phone. Sorry about that. Phone, request phone, and final description, request description. Okay, right. So once everything is done over here, so we still need this guy over here, query where first. But now instead of this, we don't want to get, we are making a post request or put request, but post request to do the same. So here we're going to send this, all this information in a map. Okay, all right, so now to do this, you know, this is a map. So here we're gonna do name, and here birthday. Well, this ID is smart over here, it can recognize what I'm going to do. So this is our jobs, phone, just make sure that nothing is wrong earlier. All right, so that's it. So this is something that we are going to return. I'm not going to return, actually. This is something we are going to do update. And once the update is successful, you can just say update success, update success. Okay, and in this case, you don't need to return anything. And otherwise, you can say server error. Okay. And that's pretty much it about this section. Well, I think we are good to go. So all we need to do, we need to go ahead and try this just to make sure the spellings are correct. Okay, now to try this, we're gonna come over here, and inside this profile, actually we can create another request, and here we can say edit profile. And for this one, we can simply copy from here and put it here. And we're gonna do post, and we're gonna call it edit. Okay, all right. And authorization, make sure you have it as bearer token. Now we're gonna go to the body, and let's submit a form data. Okay. Now, to be able to work with this, I do believe part of the data we can just copy from here. Okay, because we don't need to write everything manually. Part of them we can delete. No, I don't think we can copy. The problem is it's a map. Over here we're gonna submit a form data, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, so here I'm gonna say name and value the best tech, and what else, birthday. All right, so for birthday itself, let's see if I can, no, well, here's null, so I'm going to say 200. All right, let's put it like this for now. Gender, and here say 1 for male, right? And 2 for female. We could do like that. And phone, say 13761849011615, doesn't really matter. And description, full stack developer. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and see if we are good to go with this. So here, let's hit this. Okay, so here it says update success. Now if it is success, so let's see if we could change the information, which means that we are going to call this one again. So of course, remember earlier I changed it to the best tag, and I had a phone number as well as birthday and the description. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit it. Okay, so here we go. Awesome. So this changed, description changed, birthday looks like it's still null. I think the reason is because the format issue, the way we are submitting in our database, because this one might not be taken as a correct format. All right, so what I'm going to do over here, I'm going to try it one more time and we'll see if we have any issue or not. Okay, right, and then looks like we don't have any error on this side. So this guy over here, the birthday itself, let's check birthday, birthday, and are we doing the same birth birthday? Now it could be a format issue, okay, the way that we put in our database, but once we submit it from the front end, because Flutter will process that, okay, most probably using a calendar, for example, the one that you see. So it would be a different format anyway, so it doesn't really matter because we don't have any error, and once we debug it using front end, we'll solve this issue. Okay, so in next part we are going to continue to work on this change password. Okay, for address itself, we do see that we can add address, but we're gonna skip this part. We're gonna finish this one because it's easy, and then in next section we'll do a dedicated my address. Okay, all right, and then we're gonna also add address. Okay, so this is what we want to do. So we would just want to change our password. So you have to type in new password and old password. Okay, sorry, confirm the password. Anyway, so let's go ahead and finish this guy as well. So we are almost done with this section over here. Anyway, so here we can say edit password. So here we're gonna do profile edit password, and then I'm going to be here. I don't need this guy for this. Okay, anyway, so let me go ahead and copy him over here. Okay, right, I'm going to copy this and put it here. Okay, so we're gonna say edit password. Make sure that you spell it correctly, and as always we need the ID there. Okay, all right, so here we are going to say final password request get, it's not get, actually it's input. I'm not sure why it doesn't recognize. Anyway, so let's continue. Final password request input repass. Why does this get stuck with the repass? But anyway, so this is the two information that we need, and here we need to compare our password, okay, whether the password itself is correct or not. And if you go ahead, okay, anyway, let me go ahead and save this guy first. Make sure that they're saved. and then we need to do a check. All right, if password doesn't match with repassword, this guy, so we're gonna return to user. Okay, so here we're gonna say return response JSON. I don't think we need this. Here we're gonna return 400 because in general, if your password doesn't match, you can return 400. Okay, data is empty, and then message msg invalid password, and then over here you're gonna return 400. Okay, so password didn't match, so that's the first thing. And then what if the password matches? Okay, all right, so here we're going to do user dot query dot where, and here you're gonna do ID, user ID, and then we're gonna do update, and you already get the idea. It also be a map over here. Oops, I actually had one over here. I could have used it directly, but anyway, so let's remove that. So here, anyway, so the first thing we want to do is the password itself. We want to hash the password. Okay, so this is where we go. Now to hash the password, remember earlier in auth section we had this thing that where we hash the password. Let's see, I mean encode it. Okay, right, so this guy. Okay, so we can call this guy hash password. Do you need to import anything? Looks like no. All right, so we have hash. Okay, so let's go ahead and save it, and update success, server error. Okay, we are, looks like we are good to go with this, and this is the time that we go ahead and recheck on this. Save changes. All right, okay, so this was our earlier password, right? Okay, cool. And then now over here we're going to create a new request. Okay, just 1 minute, guys. I do believe that there is a mismatch. The profile, added profile, get profile. Where is the get profile? I think I did that, and it was supposed to be inside this guy. Looks like get profile didn't get saved over here. Sorry about that. I'm not sure where it's saved, but anyway, let's continue. So here you want to say update password. Okay, post request, and let's see, we can copy this info and let's put it here. Okay, update password. Okay, all right, and authorization, once again, let's save it, make sure it's here, and now let's come to the body. Now here you see that during login we used kind of JSON data, right? Okay, we can still do the same because Vania doesn't prevent how your data counts as JSON or in form data. It doesn't really prevent that. So that's why earlier I have done it using this. Okay, but strictly speaking, you could do in form submission or updating post. It should be mostly in your form data. Okay, so here say password, and then just let's try a little bit first and we'll see how things go. Password, and then here 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, and let's hit update and we'll see how things go. And looks like here we have an issue. API update password. Okay. Okay, so this one, server was down. Okay, let's try it. Okay, so here it did say 404 not found, and that tells us that we need to check on this. So here we say edit password, edit password, edit password, and here we do see that update password. Okay, so let's go ahead with edit. Okay, so now password is invalid because they are different, right? Okay, cool, which means it's working. And then let's make it same. Okay, update success. And then let's try to log in right now. So yeah, so which means that our login is not working anymore because we have changed the password, right? Okay, so this is also awesome. So we are done in this section as well. Okay, so now we are going to continue on this, my address. So it'll show you default address, the one that we have over here. You can try to change or you can add a new one. Okay, so this is what we are going to do. The first API we're going to build is getting the address, but of course we don't have address for now. Okay, now this is inside profile, but because it will have few sections, so I'm going to name it under address, and here we'd say get addresses. All right, and then profile controller like this, and then let's move over here. Now for this one, actually we can directly copy get profile, and if we do that, let's put it here right below it, and here we're gonna say get addresses. We already have this. Everything else stays the same, this one. And here you don't want to get only one, you want to get all of them. So here you will have get. Okay, and returned user addresses. Okay, addresses, server error. Okay, so that's the only thing you need to change over here. In fact, it's pretty easy this time. So that's the first change we did. And then of course now here, instead of user, we need to have addresses model, but we don't have that one. But we also need to change this one. We need to use addresses model or address model. So in my case, I'm going to go ahead and create a new one, and then I'm gonna call it Vania make model, say addresses, this one. And then the table name is address itself. If you check out the database table name is address, and we're gonna hit enter. And after that, over here we'll see that has been created. The class name is addresses. All right, and then let's move over here. The top, I'm going to copy this and put it here. Let's call our model addresses, and then inside over here, this one we can also change to addresses. And after that, here let's make sure you change ID to user ID, and then here we can call it user addresses. And let's copy this and put it here. Okay, all right, so we're gonna save it here. So now let's go ahead and take a look at our address table. Now here we have this user ID. Now this is the reason instead of ID we are going to use user ID. Okay, so make sure that you write it here user ID, because this user ID would be the connection between our users table over here, this guy, and this table which is addresses. Okay, so these IDs are saved over here, as you can see. That's the first thing. And another thing you have to do, well, over here earlier the table name was different. It had 3 S's, but I change it to 2 S's. So address. Okay, earlier there was a typo here. Now make sure that you change it where you have only 2 S's, otherwise you will get error. Also the reason is because here we said address, we have 2 S. All right, so make sure that you have it correctly, otherwise you will get server error 500. Okay, make sure that you are doing it correctly. Okay, and after that, when everything is ready, make the changes and then come over here, create a new post request over here, name it addresses or anything you like, and make sure you have it correctly. And then you have to have the bearer token, but if you changed your password since last time, you need to log in again and copy your token, and you need to put it here, and then you should hit enter. And we don't have any addresses, it's empty, and this is expected because we don't have any user ID over here. The reason is because if you go ahead and print user ID, you'll see that our user ID is very different. User ID. All right, so our user ID is very different. So let's go ahead and see that. Now if you do hit enter, and here you'll see that our user ID is 43, but in our table we don't have any user like that. So that's one thing you need to know. And so since we don't have any addresses, it doesn't return anything, right? So in next section we'll see how to go ahead and add addresses. Okay, now to do that, I think over here we can copy this guy where you had this added profile, and then I'm gonna put it here because there are things that we can directly use, but we need to change the name to add address. Okay, all right, so one thing that you see, user ID we can keep as it is same. Okay, and then the name we can keep as it is. The phone number we can keep here. All right, and you can add something like final country, that where you are, request country. Okay, all right, and just like this we can do city, that where you are, which city you are from, and we don't need this. We could do final here state. Okay, so this could be the part of them. Now all these fields are important in our database, so that's why we are adding them. Okay, zip code, I believe, zip code. Okay, and then we also don't need this, so we can change it to final, say detail. Okay, if you want to add anything else. Okay, and make sure we change it to addresses, otherwise we'll get error. Okay, right, now part of this thing is usable, so we can keep them, and let's remove rest of the thing. So here the other things that we need to add is, okay, country, make sure you spell it correctly, and then we have city, because a lot of time the spelling causes 500 issue. And then here we have zip code, and then we'll have details. Okay, right, I believe everything is here. Okay, and add success, otherwise we'll have server error. So these are the things that we need to go ahead and add. Now let's save this guy first. Now here, one thing that is important, instead of update, we want to do insert, right? Because we are not updating anything, we are just inserting. So this is where, and then we need to remove this actually, because we are not doing any condition over here. We are just inserting, and we need to add a new one, actually, new field. Like for example, we also need to insert user ID, right? Because we are creating a new row. So now and a few other things we also need to do actually. So here we would say created at, and then here we need to date time now, and updated at date time now. Let's go ahead and save it. Okay, let's do last check. Otherwise, okay, so here we see I wrote actually details, so we shouldn't have details. Okay, and over here it's the same thing. Here you can have it as details, it doesn't really matter. Let's save it, and then in our postman, let's change this guy to detail. Now let's hit enter, and here it says this success. But now if you come over here and try this guy, here you will see that address is shown. Okay, awesome.